They called her Mother God. She was not only God in 3D, real life, feminine form, but had been reincarnated over multiple lives as Joan of Arc, Marilyn Monroe, Cleopatra, and even claimed to remember the pain of being hung on the cross as Jesus Christ. Although these are wild claims to make, people believed her, and she amassed a following of loyal members who would stop at nothing to serve her, both in her life and in her death. It begs so many questions, and in this 2 or 3-part series, I hope to answer those questions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy part 1 of Love is One, or Has It? It's time to take a deep breath and let the fresh Erin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're brand new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I upload 2 or 3 videos on one of these topics, so if this is something that interests you, please consider subscribing. I would absolutely love to have you here. Also, all month I am featuring a different single parent in each of my videos, and today's single parent is Tammy. You will find her Amazon wish list. It has a lot of house supplies and gifts in it. It'll be in the pinned comment down below. So if you have the means this year, please consider going ahead and supporting Tammy and Savannah this holiday season. Thank you. I want to take a moment to share a thought I kept having as I was researching this cult. Now, I watched several videos about Mother God and this group. I read articles, I watched news stories, and of course, I watched the HBO docuseries that's been very popular over the last month or so. It's really easy to focus on the sensationalized aspects of cults and groups and even cases like this, to talk about a woman who thinks she's God, whose followers mummified her body after she passed and basically put her in a shrine in a bed and even slept next to her, makes people feel a whole lot of feelings. And it's really easy to focus just on these wild claims, and it's easy to pass judgment on people and wonder how in the world they would believe such outlandish claims, or how they could be loyal to a leader when literally everything around them is proving that leader wrong. So, in this series on my channel, I hope to try to understand more about how and why this happens myself, and hopefully it helps viewers understand as well. And although we're going to cover all of that, I really want to get into the nitty gritty of the leader, this group, and how it functioned. So let's just take a trip down the rabbit hole together. So, welcome to part 1. Let's start at the beginning. Who was Mother God? Well, her real name was Amy Carlson. Amy Carlson was born on November 30th in 1975 in McPherson, Kansas. Her mother had been brought up in that area and would joke that tornadoes seemed to follow her everywhere. And she might have been right about that, if not in the literal sense, maybe in the figurative one. She was only 20 years old when she gave birth to Amy, and I imagine that this was not a planned pregnancy, as her mother described the relationship with Amy's father to be tumultuous. Amy's parents fought a lot, even in front of her and her sister, which I believe can be pretty detrimental to a child's mental health. So, luckily, Amy's parents split up when she was 7 years old. Amy and her sister Tara went to go live with their father, who had been remarried. After complaints of being abused by her stepmother, Amy and her sister would return to her mother's home to be in her care. However, her mother has said that she's unsure that Amy truly ever processed the abuse that she suffered. Still, though, Amy was the type of little girl that just grabbed your attention. She was a charming, outgoing girl. She loved playing and playing dress up. She seemed to just have this larger than life personality and was just a fun loving little girl. And she always seemed to be the center of attention. Whether this was intentional or not, she just had that energy about her. As she grew up, she was popular and successful in school. She was smart and she got really good grades. But when she was around 14, she began focusing on other things. Like a lot of teenage girls, she became interested in boys and noticed that her friends seemed to get more attention from boys than she did. I mean, like we've said, she enjoys being the center of attention. And again, like a lot of teenage girls, she thought that perhaps the reason she wasn't getting attention was because of her weight. This was when her mother first noticed that she began having a negative relationship with food. It was something Amy just had to control. And even her mother said that when she lost weight, she did seem to gain more confidence in herself. And this new confidence was validated when she would inevitably get more attention from men. She would also begin to have some success in her career, which also added to her confidence. She had began working at McDonald's and had been fast-tracked into a management role. Amy was a natural at this. After taking some in-house management classes at McDonald's, she had really mastered how to lead people with encouragement, motivation, and seemed to have a really bright future ahead of her. And I can only speculate that this training and her experience as a manager only helped her as her cult grew later. I mean, she was able to simultaneously demand respect from people while also inspiring them to work on themselves and stay the course and be of service. And like we've seen in so many cults, this balance is absolutely crucial to cult leaders maintaining control over their victims. A cult leader needs to manipulate their followers into believing that any discomfort or any abuse even that they endure is only for their benefit. And if they refuse, they're then giving up on themselves, or in Love Has Won's case, the mission. But more on that later. So, Amy is now in her late teens, early 20s. She's said to have a beautiful singing voice, and she's been feeling confident about herself and does begin attracting several male suitors. When she's 21 years old, she would have her first child, a son named Cole. She was a young mother, just like her own mother before her, and the relationship she had with his father was also tumultuous. As she continued dating, she would have another child 5 years later, a daughter named Maddie, and after that, with a third man, she'd have another son. It seemed that she just always had difficulty maintaining healthy relationships, perhaps based off of her upbringing and witnessing her parents argue. Maybe she thought that an argumentative or perhaps even type of relationship was normal. Some therapists believe that when a child is a witness to fighting, it can create harmful patterns in future relationships. And furthermore, if a child is abused, they may grow up to have unhealthy romantic bonds as well. So one can't help but wonder, in Amy's case, that perhaps her pattern with men is due in part to what she experienced as a child. It could also explain how she would later treat some members of her cult and future romantic partners. So now Amy is in her mid to late 20s and she's become a bit of a partier. It seems she never really felt any true maternal instincts for her children, and she was more interested in seeking some type of fulfillment outside of family life or work life. One night, she was experimenting and she took ecstasy. And according to her, she felt such immense joy and happiness, which, I mean, that's exactly what ecstasy does. It's the effect of the drug. It makes every little sight, feeling, touch, smell feel just euphoric. But instead of recognizing that this was a side effect of the drug, Amy believed that this was her true feeling, how she was meant to feel. And she became angry that someone had taken this feeling away from her. She began equating that happy, joyous feeling to having a high vibration. And yes, something that feels good would have a higher frequency or vibration, I suppose, but she seemed to point the finger at some unknown entity that seemed to be against her and was keeping this joyous, high vibration feeling from her, as if society didn't want her to feel good or something. The unspecified they became the enemy. And just looking at this from the outside and totally speculating here, this is a woman who, at one point in her life, hadn't become what she thought she would become. She had always had a big personality. She had always had big dreams and always loved attention. She felt like she wasn't where she wanted to be in life, and her life looked a lot different than she thought it would look. So I speculate that at this age, maybe she was depressed. I mean, she'd already been drinking for years, perhaps in excess, and she'd begun to experiment with drugs to try to make herself feel better. And this euphoria that she felt when she tried ecstasy was so significant to her, perhaps because she hadn't felt that good in a really long time. I mean, we have to remember that this is the late 90s, early 2000s, and mental health was barely beginning to even be talked about, let alone a priority. I mean, TV shows still would make fun of other characters in them for having a therapist. For many at the time, admitting you were in therapy immediately meant that something had to be wrong with you. So many people were discouraged from seeking out help purely because of the fear that they would discover that something was wrong with them. It isn't like it is today, where a diagnosis is actually seen as something that helps people a lot, and simply going to therapy weekly is really common and openly talked about. I mean, I encourage everyone and anyone to go to therapy and get diagnosed if it's going to help your quality of life. But back then, it was just kind of a symptom of the times that talking about mental health was very taboo. So I can't help but wonder if perhaps she had sought out therapy rather than this false feeling that was brought on by a drug, then maybe we wouldn't even be here talking about this cult today. Amy had such an ethereal experience with ecstasy that she became a seeker and began spending a lot of her time on the internet looking for spiritual guidance. And finally, she came upon a website called lightworkers.org. And if you don't know what a lightworker is, a lightworker is someone who is considered to be very sensitive and empathetic, someone who is very aware of the suffering of other people and the world. And it's a person who feels like they have a special connection with what some people might call source energy or communication with a higher power, or what you might call angels and spirit guides. People that prescribe to this belief that they are light workers tend to believe that they're part of a collective consciousness and have the ability to spread positive energy and thus heal people even from long distances. It really can be a beautiful concept, and oftentimes people that just feel like they feel a little bit more are very sensitive, like an HSP, a highly sensitive person. Oftentimes they might come to this belief and feel like it makes a lot of sense because it can feel very isolating if you're a very, very sensitive person. It might be more difficult for you to connect with other people, but you're still very, very sensitive and empathetic towards them, if that makes sense. But I'm sure, as you can imagine, when people become obsessed with this concept of being a light worker, it can get a little concerning. And Amy was diving deep into this concept. Her mother shares that she'd even begun having a different way of speaking. And I'm guessing it's that law of attraction way of speaking, where you're only putting words into positive connotations to attract positive energy to oneself and to send positive energy out. Amy spent a lot of time on the internet, on lightworkers.org and in their online forums. She would end up having a deep connection with a man she met on this website. His name is Amerith White Eagle. Amerith was living a very peaceful life in a small town in Colorado called Crestone. This town is known for being a bit of a hub for hippies. It's a town that promotes sustainability, environmentalism, and basically attracts all sorts of spiritual practitioners, from Hinduism to Buddhism to Native American traditions and New Age practices. It seems this small town has a rich history of accepting all religions, so it's really no surprise that New Age practitioners would be inspired to go here. It kind of reminds me of like a little Sedona, where the main attraction is the nature and the spiritual energy being present there. And so Amrith was living here and he connected with Amy online. Eventually, he would convince her that she had a more spiritual purpose here on earth, that she was a divine woman and she should be in a divine place. He would convince her to pack up and leave her home, her children, her job, her family, and leave she did. One day, the family was out at a restaurant celebrating a birthday, and reportedly, Amy just stood up and walked out. She had packed up all her things, and by the time her family got home, they realized she wasn't coming back. Her oldest son was 10, her daughter 5, and the two of them, along with their younger brother, were just left behind. I can't imagine the impact this must have had on those children. They seem to be very patient and understanding about their mother's abandonment, for lack of a better word. And Cole has even said that he pitied her. And it's really quite kind and mature of them to treat the situation in this way. But the impact I can only imagine it must have had on them when they were that young must have been so detrimental to them. But I'm really glad to see that they're both moving forward with so much compassion. So, in 2007, Amy moves to Crestone, and she is immediately in awe of the nature, the connection she feels to the energy of the place, and the connection she feels to Amerith. She and him begin a romantic relationship and even end up getting married. The two of them believe that they have a divine connection. They believe, of course, that they are twin flames, two beings that are part of the same soul, and they've finally come together. And like a lot of cult leaders, Amy and Amaranth believed the state of the world was absolutely terrible, and they strived for a heaven on earth. They really believed that they could ascend the 3D, our physical world. They believed that our 3D world is this capitalistic structure of hustle culture, where the material world is what's most important. What you own, how much money you have, this 3D illusion, as they call it, is creating a separation among humans. It's creating this every man for himself mentality. And to them, it's a belief that we're all imprisoned in, that it's some illusion that we're all stuck in. This is what a lot of people also refer to as the matrix. So, people who subscribe to this belief tend to hate capitalistic conditioning or any structure of life. So, over the last few years, maybe you've heard people say, oh, this is all just a simulation. And that's not just a reference to the movie, The Matrix. The Matrix is the idea that our societal systems, as we know them, are all secretly being controlled and manipulated, and we can't allow ourselves to get stuck in this structure. So, if you're living in the 3D or in the matrix, you are effectively experiencing low frequency vibrations like sadness, anger, fear. And some sources say that it's kind of funny that you're having a logical reaction to most things instead of an emotional one, which, yeah, how dare you be logical? Question mark. But Amy and Amaranth believed that there was more to this 3D life. They believed they could ascend into the 5D, into a higher spiritual dimension. Because in the 5D, we're all interconnected. We are on a high vibrational wave, okay? We're all thinking positively, purely, full of love and abundance. 5D is the ultimate way of life. And if all of humanity reached this fifth dimension, we could literally end all human suffering according to them. They also believed that their angels were hiding in the clouds. They called them cloud ships. And there was a belief and implication that those were UFOs hiding in the lenticular clouds, which are basically flying saucer shaped clouds. So, this would indicate to them that there was a galactic force out there communicating with them and protecting them. And so, listen, I just want to say that some of this is just quite difficult for me to wrap my brain around, especially when it comes to like UFOs and some kind of galactic energy or being coming to us. It doesn't fully resonate with me. I don't really know how I feel about aliens. I know that there's in recent years been like evidence to prove that they exist, but honestly, I it's not something I ponder often, so maybe that's why it doesn't resonate. And this matrix idea doesn't necessarily resonate for me either. This is all, of course, my own opinion, and I'd love to hear yours. But there seems to have been a bit of a gateway between this kind of ideology and theories, which we will dive into a little bit deeper into part 2 of this video. So, if I'm not explaining all of this as eloquently as I would like to, I just wanted to share that it is a little difficult me to put into words some of these beliefs because it simply doesn't resonate. And I don't want to come off as judgmental at all. Because if this is what resonates with you, then awesome. Like on this channel, we are accepting of everyone's beliefs as long as you're not harming others or yourself. But when I kind of read this 3D versus 5D literature or hear about these cloud ships, to me, purely in my opinion, it sounds like another way of saying that 3D is being in a stressed, kind of bad state of mind, and 5D is that feeling of elation, love, happiness, and maybe more connectedness and understanding to our fellow man. Maybe looking up into the sky and seeing a cloud ship and feeling a sense of peace could be similar to feeling a protective energy surrounding you, or feeling like you're seeing a sign or a synchronicity in your life that could come from what you call God or a passed on loved one. Or maybe it's that feeling of being so in awe of nature. And maybe I'm being a little too cynical or too logical, but I kind of think that as humans, we really like defining states of beings that can't really be defined. I think that having a definition or an explanation for something that's difficult to put into words just makes us feel more safe in a way. The sources I read even said that 3D living is living in a state of fear, and 5D living is living in peace and love. So, even when we talk about these spiritual concepts and beliefs, from where I stand at least, it seems like people are just trying to understand themselves, how they feel, how they perceive things, where they can improve, where they can grow, where they can better their relationships. And since feelings are difficult to describe, we like to put meanings and definitions and titles on them when we could just simply say, like, today I'm feeling good or I'm feeling a little stressed. It doesn't have to mean too much, it can just be that you're having that feeling. I believe that when we try to put too much meaning on these feelings, which are such a normal and beautiful part of being human, it's really easy to shame ourselves for having negative feelings and try to fight constantly to feel the positive ones. So I just wanted to say that if there's anyone out there that's kind of falling into this cycle, just know that all of your feelings, whether you perceive them to be happy or positive or negative and sad, they're all valid, and you can't really control how you feel. You can only control how you react to those feelings. Amy and Amerith, however, they really resonated with these beliefs, and their lives began to be defined in a way by these beliefs. They really identified themselves as being two beings that were creating a new earth because they were ascending to the 5D realm. So, in order to spread their message so that they could heal the earth, they started a website called the Galactic Free Press. And this would be where they began to identify themselves as Mother God and Father God, there to promote world peace and love. Amrith had told Amy that she was divine, that she was Mother God, and he was Father God. But after a few years, those two would separate. But Amy would carry on with her title of Mother God. And I have to say, I do find this very interesting because Amy has three children that she essentially abandoned. It's said that she never even had a maternal instinct towards those children, but she goes on to call herself Mother God and asks her followers to call her mother, mom, etc. It just seems odd to me that she would want this title and be this nurturing presence in people's lives when she doesn't want to do it for her children. And I can't help but wonder if it was to reduce some kind of subconscious shame she felt for leaving her kids, that she had to make herself believe that these other people needed her as their mother. They needed her healing. They needed some kind of maternal influence in their life so that her being their mother justified her leaving her own children in some way. And obviously, I'm speculating here, and it's just an interesting thing to talk about for me. But on the other hand, if she was being intentional with her choice to go by Mother God, it could have been very insidious because many people were drawn to her because she was God in feminine form and not how God had been known to people as being a man. She was the embodiment of feminine source energy, Mother Earth, Mother God. So Amy embraced her new identity as Mother God and continued posting videos sharing her message of spreading love and exposing her own divinity to the world. And honestly, at the beginning, she did have a kind of like soft, gentle charisma on camera. You know, she spoke with a very soothing voice and she was sharing messages of spreading love and positive energy. A little bit conspiracy theory just thrown in there for fun, I guess. And soon she would gain her first loyal follower, a man named Mike Lamboy, whom Mother God would rename Archangel Michael. And if you don't know, Archangel Michael is actually a known spiritual warrior across several religions and beliefs. He is considered to be a protector or guardian of sorts, and some religions even consider him to be a captain. He's considered to be a champion of good versus evil. So I suppose it's no surprise that this Mike character would have a lot of control in Mother God's new endeavor. Interestingly enough, he would be the one to handle the money and the property in this new endeavor. Mike's kind of an interesting character in this story because he provided testimonials that Mother God had cured him of stage 4 cancer with her energetic healing. He helped her gain a following and encouraged her to just keep posting. Once he began selling services online, he became a part of that too. He encouraged people to book these healing sessions. Some were called awakening sessions, and these treated those 5D ascension symptoms one might experience. So, dizziness, nausea, digestion issues, things that were associated, according to them, with raising your vibrational frequency so quickly. There were also energetic healings called etheric surgeries, which they claimed could cure almost any ailment, no matter what, because every single physical ailment, whether it is a disease or a virus or cancer, is just stuck energy, stuck emotions, low vibrational stuff that she could clear out, and from long distance, no less, because she's in the fifth dimension and she can energetically heal anyone, no matter where they are in the world, because she's Mother God. So they believed that all physical pain and suffering was just caused by negative energy in the body and negative emotions. And so people would just pay Amy to energetically rid themselves of disease. And people bought into it because they believed she was God. So she was actually able to sell people on the idea of an etheric healing. It seemed that all the money they began to make, though, was somehow always filtered through Mike, and he would continue to get more and more savvy with it, especially when he would end up turning the business into a nonprofit later in 2020. Just seems very convenient and right out of the cult playbook. And this brought up another major question for me. Who really was this Mike guy? Did he really believe in Amy, or did he just think that she would be a cash cow for him? Could he have been the mastermind behind this whole operation? Because as the business grew, he started putting everything in his name, and Amy trusted him to do that. He was the only person who would have any legal claim to the money or the homes that they would eventually buy. And she seemingly didn't really have a hand in any of it legally. So I really can't help but wonder, could Mike have been the puppeteer pulling all of the strings and putting Amy up on this high pedestal that she even started believing in it? And it just seems really ironic that they're trying to get people to abandon, hustle culture and hard working because they're getting stuck in the 3D matrix, but they literally post every single day and live stream every day to try to sell these healing sessions. It just feels a little counterproductive to the mission. And Amy would begin writing her story in composition books and basically retell history with herself as these main characters. She had been Joan of Arc in one life, Marilyn Monroe in another, and she gave her followers this composition book to read. It had all just been handwritten by her. She claimed that she'd been reborn time and time again as all these different major iconic players in history. Basically, any woman that was a well known person or to have had some difference they made in the world, that was Amy. She was God and she was all of those reincarnations. And I think this is honestly the first cult leader that I've heard of that wasn't just like claiming to be God or one single entity. She was literally claiming to be everyone. Every significant woman that had been Amy. Mother God had also been posting videos in her online forum and had also been conducting video group chats where she would answer people's burning questions about the 5D realm. She'd also begun diving into some theory rabbit holes, claiming that certain systems that were in place or long held beliefs were beginning to crumble. She believed that the banking system, pharmaceutical companies, and even the Vatican were all corrupt and would eventually fall. And I don't think that there's any coincidence that this is right after the housing crisis of 2008. I mean, we were deep, deep in recession in America, and a lot of people were looking for someone to blame. So people who believed in these sort of ideas in the early 2010s would eventually find their way to her website where she was sharing her opinions as if they were fact with authority. People were drawn to her, and her online following began to grow. So in 2012 or 2013, she went to Mount Shasta, another deeply spiritual place. Some people even say, like, if you consider yourself spiritual and you haven't been to Mount Shasta, then you are not a spiritual person. So she ended up finding a nice big house in the middle of the woods, and she began welcoming her growing number of followers to that home. According to Amerith, that was all she really ever wanted. She just wanted followers. Just like when she was a little girl, a teenager, and even a young woman in her early 20s, she was really hungry for that attention. She really wanted to be up on a pedestal, and soon she would become that. She would soon attract a new follower named Andrew. Andrew had apparently been having dreams about her after watching her day after day, and she claimed to have had the same dreams about him. I mean, that's the thing about the 5D. If you're there with others, you can meet in dreams. And she eventually told Andrew that he was meant to do good work with her. So he left home to join her, and soon she would tell him that he was Father God. Shocked by this, but still committed to the mission of ascending all of humanity into the 5D for world peace, he began appearing with her in her videos and even rebranded her website to Love Has Won. But he was also actively recovering from an addiction, and Amy was drinking and doing almost every single day. See, these substances would become her spiritual tools. She claimed to use them to heal herself from all the negative energy she was cleansing off of other people. So she would basically drink heavily to rid herself of that energy. But in my opinion, she was an addict too, and I believe that Andrew recognized that. This just would not be a good environment for him, so he would eventually leave. Plus, he had started butting heads with Archangel Michael. Andrew had stopped believing that Amy was Mother God. He saw her claiming to have healed all her trauma and to be only love and light, but then basically drown herself in alcohol every single evening. And then she would get mean. And he would try to get her to admit that maybe she was wrong. Maybe she wasn't Mother God. And according to him, a few times, she did admit that she didn't know if she really was Mother God. But then this Michael would have a private conversation with her and convince her that, yes, she was Mother God, but Andrew was trying to destroy the both of them. So she continued to believe she was Mother God, and Andrew would end up leaving after receiving the ultimatum: shut up or leave. So he decided to leave. But he had streamlined her online presence, so after he left, she just kept growing. Her following grew faster and faster, and Mother God and the business would expand. Mother God was doing paid for healings basically all day, every day. So when she met Faith, a traveled, pretty young woman who had been conducting chakra cleansing all over the world, she happily invited her into her, well, I guess it's safe to say now, commune. Faith would begin conducting these online healings, and in several of them, she'd invite people to Mount Shasta where she would tell them they belonged. And she literally made them feel just like that, like they belonged. So, if you're someone who'd been searching online for healing, understanding, and belonging, this would probably feel like home. And it might even feel like heaven on earth. People kind of began flocking to this spiritual house in the mountains. They got to meet Mother God and were all joyous that Mother God seemed to just want to play every night. So every single night they would party, they would drink, smoke, and even do psychedelics. All of the followers seemed to share the same distinction that when they were high, they could hear better. They also live streamed this daily, so people were seeing these hippie vibing people all like having the time of their lives and not really seeming to care about anything else. They seemed to have no stress, they were loved, they were feeling good energy, they were living in the 5D. It obviously looked like fun. They made it look like this is what it's like to live in the fifth dimension. But really, they're just all like hopped up on drugs or drunk. And when you're perpetually on some kind of substance, it's bound to alter your brain and your sensibilities and your state of mind long term. And if you're consistently having these esoteric conversations with other people who are intoxicated, who think the same way you do, it's all going to seem real. You're going to feel like you've figured out the secret to life. According to the footage, it looked like all of these people were searching for meaning and healing and had possibly been self healing on their own by seeking out these substances. And suddenly they found Mother God, and it gave them an excuse to indulge in this behavior, maybe even to indulge in their addictions. Mother God touted drugs and alcohol as healing tools. She was high or drunk every single day. And it was said that she was a mean drunk too. But if she did have an attitude or an outburst, basically when she was like literally abusive to her followers and their children and animals, she blamed it on the negative energies that she was having to take on while healing them. So she was cleaning their energy and the energy of the entire world. And the only way to help manage the emotional pain she was feeling because she was doing such a service to humanity was to consume alcohol and it ended up being her followers' fault, but also literally everyone else in the collective's fault, meaning everyone in the world's fault who hadn't ascended to 5D. Because the more she tried to heal others, the more sick she was going to become. And the more sick she would become, the more alcohol she would need to ward off that negative energy. So every bad reaction that Amy had was because of that other, the mysterious they outside the group that refused to heal. People who didn't believe in what she preached, couldn't believe that she was Mother God, were just so deeply in their own self hatred that they were unable to heal. So, in other words, if you don't accept this woman as God, then that's because you have so much self hatred in your heart that she's just mirroring yourself back to you. And the problem is you, not the fact that her and these people are all living in this induced delusion, right? She was Mother God. Her, along with her followers, are taking so many mind altering substances that the lines become blurred on what's real and what's just really a hallucination. So when Amy starts claiming that there's a galactic group of dead celebrities and religious icons that she consults with regularly to give her spiritual guidance, most commonly being Robin Williams, people were already in that altered state of mind to start accepting that as true. They just started believing whatever she told them. She had become the authority figure in their lives. And she may even have begun believing it herself. So, all of that to say, when we hear just the sensationalized parts of stories like this, it's really easy to write people off as delusional or stupid or some other offensive remark about people who are victims of cults because these young people who are just looking on the internet and coming upon this messaging, looking for healing from someone that's claiming they can energetically heal them. And then that person is saying, you have a much bigger mission on this planet. You need to come do the mission here with us. They're victims. Amy, in a way, could have been a victim too, a victim of her own addiction. And that's just why I think it's super important to dive deeper into details of this story and others and to really ask more questions because it's so easy to just be like, hold on, she thought she was God and believed that Trump was her father in a past life. Oh, and also she confers with Robin Williams regularly, who gives her advice on how to live her life. And all these people believe her. I mean, that's crazy. But under the right set of circumstances, the answer is yes, it can happen. We have to remember to consider where people are before they find a cult like this, and we have to understand what they're searching for. What is the cult providing for them, and how much of that information is being reinforced on a daily basis? The internet was still pretty new when she started to come into power. Her followers could have easily been young people looking for a good time, just like they could have been people seeking to heal themselves or searching for a new way of life, or people who were affected by the recession and desperate to find meaning in something other than money and the grind. And remember, we're living in a technical age. The internet is brand new. We're living in a world of algorithms that literally only show you content that you're interested in. If you search 5D Ascension one time, the algorithm is going to start sending you link after link that supports however you feel about 5D Ascension. It's going to show you more of what you're already looking at. The more you click on a video with twin flames in the title, the more the algorithm is going to show you twin flames content, especially if you're continuously seeking this information out. The algorithm is literally helping people stay on one side of a way of thinking. It's literally promoting cult mentality. This is something called confirmation bias, and it's defined as the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs or values. So if you go down any rabbit hole on the internet, you're only going to find more information about that one particular rabbit hole. So you combine possible years of an algorithm providing you with all of the confirmation bias you need. Then you move to a remote community of people who all believe the same thing you do. And then that belief is reinforced on a daily basis, and you're constantly in some kind of altered state of mind talking about these ideas with people who all share the same belief as you. I mean, it's bound to start to sink in, especially because you've started connecting with this cult leader on an extremely personal, emotional level. You're living with her at this point, and in your eyes, she is your mother. She's taking care of you. So it can become difficult to see the red flags or consider any other way of thinking. A lot of these spiritual practitioners believe that anyone who doesn't believe their way of thinking is brainwashed or stuck in the matrix or a sheep. But I would argue that it's actually the opposite. If you're only ever seeking out information that confirms what you already believe, that is literally the definition of staying in one way of thinking. It is literally staying in the cult mindset. It abolishes all critical thinking because critical thinking requires that you look at the opposite point of a given situation or belief. So, as we dive deeper into this cult and the people who were affected and still are seemingly affected by it, I want to make it clear so that my viewers and myself can move forward in this series with compassion. In part two, we're going to continue on this story and we'll discuss a little bit more about the followers, how some of them got into the cult, what the day to day life looked like within the cult, and I'll also share some firsthand accounts of people's experiences living in the cult and leaving the cult behind. There's literally so much to uncover, and honestly, this may end up being a three-part series, so please make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell is on so you do not miss any updates. And also remember to please check out the pinned comment down below and consider helping Tammy and Savannah out. Their Amazon wish list is going to be in that comment. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting my channel, and I will see you in part two in just a couple of days. Stay safe out there, and remember, always ask questions. If anyone doesn't want you to ask questions, they might be a cult leader. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.